there. I'm Cindy Linden, and this is a Cookalong podcast quick bite. Spring is on its way. It's time to do spring planting. I'm hoping after hearing me talking about all the herbs I go out and pick from my yard and how I gloat about that, you might be considering planting your own cooking herb garden this year. Sure, you can use dried herbs. They're there all year round and you know what you're getting. But I feel a cheap thrill every time I pick herbs I've grown myself to use in my cooking. I swagger back into the kitchen with a fistful of fresh snipped greenery and mostly unwarranted braggadocio. Unwarranted because they're ridiculously easy to grow. I do recommend you try growing your own. The endorphin rewards can be really pretty great. So I'm going to tell you how to do that. If you have a yard, a small square, 3 foot by 5 foot, even 3 foot by 3 foot, is big enough to grow almost everything you might want. Much more useful and attractive than your grass, so just dig up that lawn. The most reliable and useful perennial herbs, as in they'll either have leaves on them year-round or they will return every spring. Those are rosemary, English thyme, lemon thyme. I like that. It's definitely an optional thing, but I think it's really great on so many things, and I probably use it more often than the regular English thyme. Chives, it's always great to just be able to walk out into your yard and pick chives to mix into dips or eggs or to garnish something with, and then you don't have to buy them and they don't go bad in your drawer. Oregano and sage. Now, I have gardener friends who will howl in outrage about this, but just buy starts. Don't worry about seeds. Dig a hole in your new herb plot and stick them in the ground. If they don't thrive, you can go spend another $1.99 on a new start. Water them regularly till the roots take hold at least and they start to actually grow. After that, these herbs that I just told you about don't need a ton of water. They won't die if you forget about them sometimes. One caveat here. You may want to consider putting the rosemary and sage in separate locations outside of your herb bed. You can keep your delicate herbs in there, but if you wanted to make more space for your delicate herbs like the chives and the thyme, you might want to think about finding a spot to plant your sage and particularly your rosemary because they grow big and gangly. The rosemary will grow into a gorgeous bush if you let it go, and it can actually be part of your landscape rather than just part of your herb bed. That's what mine is. It's down by the end of my driveway, all by itself. They both have really woody stems, and they will look beautiful, and they smell good. And once they become established, they'll be fine without much water. In addition, I always grow several basil plants. You have to get these new every year, and they will die in the fall. Again, purchase starts. The bigger the better. These can go into the ground or into a pot. And a single pot can hold several basil plants. As long as you keep them watered, they'll be fine either way. Basil needs more attention than the perennial herbs. They need to be watered more often. Your plants or starts will probably start with big, lush leaves. And as you use the leaves, the newer growth is going to come in smaller and paler. That's fine. Just keep making that pesto or those pizzas or pastas or paninis, etc. Basil, as you can probably hear, is probably my favorite herb, although I'm a really big fan of rosemary right now. You will also want to consistently pinch off the flowers and the buds on the basil as it starts to bolt, which means it starts to go to seed. Do this and water it whenever it droops the slightest bit, and you will have fresh basil into October. Then you can pick off all the leaves and either freeze them or make pesto and freeze that, or you can actually propagate it. You can cut a stem kind of right below where it splits into little branches. Give it like an inch below that. Bring it in the house, stick it into some water, and let it root. It will take a long time. Basil is very slow to root. So you have to keep that water replenished, but it will eventually grow roots. And when it looks like it's got a good knot of roots, throw it into a pot and keep it by a sunny window in your house. And you may be lucky enough to have basil all winter as well. And when it starts to get a little shaggy or raggedy and looks like it might give up the ghost, snip off another stem and start that one rooting and just keep going, and you might be able to have basil in the house, freshly grown all year round. Worth trying, don't you think? If you're feeling adventurous or you like the flavors of them, you might think about adding parsley. Parsley is very useful to have in your yard because so many recipes call for some of it. And to have to go to the store and then try to keep fresh parsley in your fridge is just a pain in the you-know-what. And so that's a really good one to grow. Maybe you like cilantro or you like dill. You can do all of these plants in the same way I've already described. If you don't have a yard, but you do have a deck, you can grow them in pots. You put the woody ones like the rosemary and sage. You can put those in separate pots. In fact, separate from each other. I have tried growing them together, and they just have this huge battle over who's going to commandeer the pot space. And then you can put the tender ones, the little green things like the chives and thyme and stuff like that, in a different pot. They can all go together in the same pot. Or separately. It's all good. They don't even need a ton of sun. Just remember to water them and to harvest from them. If you don't have a yard or a deck, but you have a windowsill, you can get a long, narrow, rectangular box and plant herbs in there. In some ways, that's the best of all, because then you just reach up and pluck them when you're in the midst of a kitchen creation. Oh, and here's a cooking tip. Use 3 times the amount of fresh herbs that you would of dried herbs. That can be really helpful information. Write that down. Post it somewhere in your kitchen. 3 times the amount of fresh herbs that you would of dried herbs. And you can use that in the reverse. If the recipe calls for dried herbs, but you want to use fresh herbs, just multiply the dried herb amount listed in the recipe by 3 and use that much fresh herbs. If you're feeling intimidated by the prospect of caring for plants, ask yourself, if I give this a shot, what's the worst thing that could happen? Honestly, a $1.99 plant decides not to survive. It'll be okay. Give it a try. You will like it. It is so rewarding. It is so much fun cooking with things you grew yourself. If you have questions, I'd be happy to hear from you. You can email me at cindy@thecookalongpodcast.com, or you can leave me a message on Facebook or on Twitter, and I will get it and respond to you. Visit the website for some cool recipes. Remember, there's a new podcast every other week that is a brand new recipe that is also posted on the website on the same day. And these quick bites are the weeks in between. I hope you have enjoyed today's little pep talk and that you'll be brave enough to try at least one herb this spring. Tell your friends you listen to the Cookalong podcast. And until next time, happy cooking!